Ra, just unmute you. Mute you. Hang on, I'll mute you.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
Hello there, everybody. Julia Simmers here for the Cosmic Intelligence Agency. And today we are gathering, as you can see, all the astrologers behind me at the Dolby Theatre to have a prequel, to have a look at the Oscars and what movies are going to be the highlights for the 92nd Oscar nominations. Now, I have with me a special agent from Los Angeles, a new agent, Agent 121, Rishikavi Raghudas. Welcome, Ra.
Thank you, and thank you. That was a very good pronunciation of my name, too.
I told you I knew how to speak Sanskrit. Yeah, so how exciting. This is the first time we've done this, and being friends and having met in India, it's now 2 years ago, Ra. Ra is like his specialty in astrology. You've written a lot about movies and astrology, Neptune through the signs and the themes of movies at any particular sort of moment in history, which has always been a very fascinating subject. And also you've been doing the Oscar predictions in a sense for quite a while now. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, this is the 9th annual of what I call my Astro Oscars. And it began for me in 2012. I had a friend who had introduced me to his Hollywood manager. This guy was interested in astrology and wanted me to write on his website. And didn't know what to write about, and he said, why don't you see if you could predict the Oscars? And I said, yeah, that's a good idea. So I did. I looked at the event chart of the Oscars ceremony, and I did up all the charts of the nominees. And that year, Meryl Streep, who was not favored to win, actually won, and I predicted it astrologically. The manager was astonished. I went 7 for 7 at the time. He wanted to put me on Jimmy Kimmel and do all this. And then all of that fell apart. So I just kind of went and did it myself. And so every year I do this. It's the first time I've done it online. I've had an actual show where I've stood up in front of people who've done it, like Siskel and Ebert did. And I just generally write it all down. So this is the beginning of a new era here on Facebook Live, where we'll do it maybe every year this way, and
yeah, for sure,
more publicity out of it.
Yeah, well, it's quite a lot of
So,
fun, of course, and of course for movie lovers, but also such a good way to learn more astrology for everyone out there, because what Ra will be
exactly.
looking at, I mean, he's had to look at a lot of charts and gather all the information. We're not looking at all the categories, but again, expect to be here for an hour or come back and look at this
Yes.
again or whatever. But
Yeah.
you can learn a lot.
This is
Keep going,
this
sorry.
is the major categories. This is best supporting actor and actress, the lead actor and actress, the director category, and best picture.
Fantastic.
So there will be six
Yeah.
categories. Yeah, my record over the last 8 years is approximately 85% accuracy. So astrology does work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, we're going to learn a lot from, even when you sort of make predictions, you can learn and go, oh, you know, I didn't see that part. There's always something more in astrology, isn't there? So that sort of 100% accuracy is not the biggest thing. You'll learn a lot by doing it in the process. You're going to look at the event chart. Now, looking at event charts, the theme held in a chart anyway can tell you so much. So I'm looking forward to kind of looking at that. So why don't we start sharing the video, and then everyone that's on the webinar platform, not the video, the slides, and the charts, you can ask questions and I can field them as we go. So you ready? You ready, Ra?
I am ready. Yes.
You're ready?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
I'm going to...
All right, so now we have a slideshow, and Julia is going to control that for us. So if you've got that pulled up, there we are.
Well, there you are for your 9th annual predictions. Astro Oscars,
Okay,
good name.
That's it. Yes,
That's
I trademarked that too.
So you've been doing this since 2012. I'll leave it over to you.
Correct. Yes, that's when I first began it, and it's become an annual tradition. And hopefully, perhaps even next year, we'll do it even bigger. So the next slide should be the event chart for this year. Okay, so let's take a look at this chart. What's the first thing you notice about it? The sun is on the horizon. They've actually switched the time to be a little earlier. It used to be always Virgo rising, but this year is beginning at 5 p.m. in Hollywood at the Dolby Theater right in the heart of Hollywood. It now has Leo rising. So the sun in Aquarius on the horizon is also different because it used to be a little later in the year. So they originally had it in March and sometimes even April. And then Harvey Weinstein was known before his degradation for these scorched earth Oscar campaigns. And they just thought, this is just too much. So we're going to shorten the time period. So they put it into the latter part of February. And then because of the Golden Globes getting such publicity, they wanted to do it a little quicker. So now the sun is actually in Aquarius in the Oscars chart with Leo rising. So what does that tell you at first? That tells you that perhaps more independent or individualist types of films would be favored by this chart. Excuse me. And it has Leo rising, which means that it could be a spectacular, something that is very expressive and just very movie. There's nothing really small about Leo rising. So a big movie could be the winner on Sunday. And let's take a look then at the moon. The big triad is the sun, ascendant, and moon, always in any chart. Okay, where's the moon here? The moon is in the first house. What does that tell you? The moon in the first house would immediately say an emotional connection to some film, something that gets your blood stirring. But it's in the rather antiseptic sign of Virgo, which is not very emotional at all. It is, however, very technical. Everything kind of, works together for the benefit of everything in terms of it being put together. So we could expect this year to see some sort of technical prowess being very prominent in the winning film. And also, it just looks to be one of those, let's go ahead and have a good time types of energies. But look at all that Capricorn in the 5th and the 6th house. I count 5 planets, counting the South Node, in Capricorn. That's a lot of energy in Capricorn. And so it could be, despite the Leo rising, maybe a very serious broadcast, you know, where issues are brought up, social issues. But look at Uranus at the top of the chart. Uranus is the revolution, chaos, the freedom from the known. Uh-oh, could that be an upset? Well, we'll go through it and see, but it's kind of a mixed chart. It's not an easily predictable thing this year. So I'll be honest, I'll be lucky if I get them all right this year, because this is a tough chart to read. So look at the Mercury and Neptune in Pisces. Yeah, very imaginative, but could be a little confusing too. If you do a wide opposition, you could say that the moon is opposing Mercury. So who knows what's going to happen? Well, we'll take a look at the categories, see what we can see.
Right, I just wanted to add, I noticed that the moon is on the fixed star Regulus.
Yes,
so I'm kind of thinking, you know, is it a story about some heroine or hero that wins a day? Anyway, that's just an observation.
Sure. We'll look at this later when we get to Best Picture as well, and I'll give you some of my secrets to the predicting.
Yeah.
You'll have to promise not to tell anybody.
No, sure. And just the thought of some of the movies and all that Capricorn. There's one of the movies, Irishman, is like the longest, 6-hour movie, that sort of long about the past, Saturn ruled, something taking time, about aging. I don't know, there's quite a few categories that would fit that, or quite a few movies would fit that perhaps as well. Anyway, I just wanted to put that in.
Okay, so great. So let us move to the first of our categories, please, Maestro. Here we are, the Best Supporting Actor. Okay, let us take a look at the first chart. This belongs to Joe Pesci, the wonderful, renowned, previously Oscar-winning actor from The Irishman. Okay, let us take a look at the next slide, which is Joe Pesci's chart. Okay, here we go. Now, you'll notice that the birth chart is on the inside. In the outer wheel is the ceremonies chart. Okay, so the synastry is what we look at here as to where the planets are in relation to the natal chart. Now, Joe Pesci, I put first because his aspects don't really hit very well. He's got one major aspect, which is up at in the 10th house, where Neptune sits in a trine to his Jupiter in the 3rd house. The part of fortune is also there. And Neptune, as you may have known, or will certainly learn if you go to any of my lectures on Hollywood and the Neptune factor, which I did do in India, is the ruler. Neptune is the ruler of film, considered that. So Joe Pesci's transit of Neptune trine his Jupiter brought in this nomination for him. He does have Mercury at the top of the chart sitting on his Venus. Could that be a speech? Well, sure, but at the same time, it's not really that strong. It's just, sort of a one-day transit. And it does happen to be his birthday on Sunday. So he has his solar return in Hollywood, maybe even during the ceremony itself. So, but other than it being his birthday, and the Neptune trine Jupiter, I'm not seeing anything that is really going to pull it in for him. So I'm going to give Joe Pesci a wave goodbye. He does have Saturn coming up to the top of the chart right there within 2 degrees, but that's kind of a hard angle for a win, particularly because it's just coming off his natal Mercury. So Joe Pesci, love you, babe, but not this year. Okay, next person in this category. Anthony Hopkins, one of your favorites from the 2 popes. And let us take a look at Anthony's chart. Next slide, please. Okay, here we go. Now, Anthony Hopkins has a few more exact, yeah, I know you love the 2 popes. I haven't seen that one. Anthony Hopkins' chart has some more exact aspects. Look at his ascendant, 22 degrees Capricorn. Well, what just happened at 22 degrees Capricorn? Saturn and Pluto conjuncted right there. And on my Mars, don't ask what my January was like. But Joe Pesci's Pluto, Anthony Hopkins' Pluto sits right there also on his ascendant. So the Saturn-Pluto conjunction sat right on his Pluto. And Anthony Hopkins is, you know, pretty old now. He's, I think, 82, 83 or so. Actually, I'm not sure. You know, Pluto return, you don't get a Pluto return out of that. So in any case, the Saturn-Pluto was pretty tough on him, and he's got Saturn, there he is, Saturn opposing Pluto. So, I'm sorry, I'm misstating myself here. His sun is on the ascendant. So I was looking at the outer chart. So what he's got is Mars sitting on his moon. Okay, so Mars on his moon, just basically a 1 or 2 day transit. And then you look at Saturn on coming up close to his Jupiter. It's still within 4 to 6 degrees. I'm just kind of not seeing it. So nice as Anthony Hopkins is, renowned actor that he is, I am just not seeing anything here that could pull it in for him. The transiting moon on that day sits in an inconjunct to his Jupiter. That's not a winning aspect. Right, the nodes are on Mercury. You are correct there. But it's, could that be a speech? Nah. Nah, it looks to me as though he gets another shot, though. Anthony Hopkins is not done being at the Oscars, I think. Okay, let us move toward the next nominee. That's Al Pacino. Hooah! Yes, Al Pacino, the great actor who won for The Scent of a Woman. Okay, his chart. Let us take a look at his chart. Yes, this is a real chart. He was born in New York, as you might have known, at 11:02 a.m. Doesn't he seem just like this prototypical New York type, kind of loud and brash? Okay, now Al Pacino has got some very interesting aspects here. Let's take a look at the 10th house. Look at that. Uranus is sitting on his Saturn. All right, now Al Pacino has not won for quite a while. And it's in his 10th house of career and recognition. Could that pull in a win for him? It would be an upset. That's Uranus. It would certainly be an upset there. But if you look at some of the other transits, there aren't really a lot of them. The most that I'm seeing is that the transiting moon is making a nice trine to his sun Saturn at the top of the chart. And I'm just kind of not seeing anything that would be strong enough to really, that I would look for in any case, that would pull in a win for him. So we're going to leave Al Pacino to sniffing women and just go on to appreciate his long career, his long work in both the theater and in films, and say, we love you, Al, but it's not your year. Okay, next nominee is America's dad, favorite actor, Tom Hanks. And when you heard about the casting for the film about Mr. Rogers, didn't you think that Tom Hanks was perfect for that? Tom Hanks. Okay, now I could see an upset here. Tom Hanks is a beloved figure, and he has not won in a long time. He hasn't won, in fact, since the 80s, or excuse me, the 90s, when he was nominated twice in a row and won 2 years in a row, once for Forrest Gump and once for Philadelphia. So let's take a look at Mr. Hanks. Okay, so the node is sitting in his 10th house atop his Mercury. That could be a speech. That could be a speech right there. Let's take a look. What else? The transiting moon on Oscar night sits on his Jupiter precisely at the beginning of the ceremony, and they usually do the best supporting roles, or one of the categories of the best supporting actor or actress at the beginning of the broadcast. So Tom Hanks has a real shot at this, I think. Now, when you look a little bit further down in his 5th house, where Saturn and Pluto are, you'll notice that Pluto is trine Tom's ascendant. That is another strong sign that Tom Hanks could pull off an upset here. Jupiter is also sitting in his 4th house on his Juno, which means he's liked, to quote Sally Field. You like him, you really like him. But Saturn in the 5th is also square Tom's Uranus. And his Uranus sits in the 11th house. Excuse me, that's I guess it isn't from what I'm seeing here. It's all right, forget all that. But the Neptune, look at the transiting Neptune near Tom's descendant, 7th house cusp, precisely on his Mars. All right, now my experience of Neptune on your Mars is that you feel a little debilitated, that your energy is not quite up to where you want it to be, although it's highly spiritual and nice and creative. And since Neptune is the ruler of film, could that be something that could bring in a win for Tom? I'm, as much as I love Tom Hanks, giving it a close but no cigar to Mr. Tom Hanks. But I think we need to go to the chart. You're right, it's trine the sun. So I like him. I really like him. It could happen. But I'm thinking Mr. Brad Pitt is our winner, and we'll show you why. Besides the sentiment, the pure sentiment of Brad Pitt never having won an Oscar, what we have here is a very strong chart being transited. Take a look, first of all, at his midheaven. What is that? That is 26 degrees Virgo. Okay. What have you got at 26 degrees in an earth sign right now? If you go down to the 2nd house, you will see Mr. Saturn, who gives earned rewards at 26 degrees Capricorn. Not just that, if you order right now, you'll also get the Saturn-Pluto recently during the voting, sitting right on his moon. Okay, and the moon, if you recall, is receiving. And so Brad, with his moon in the second house of gain and acquisition, had Saturn and Pluto sitting there, giving, I think, a culmination to a lot of his long efforts in film. So by transit, Pluto is also just short of an exact trine to his midheaven. And if you look at his sun in the first house, you will find Mars precisely on his sun next Sunday on Oscar night. So if you look also at where his Venus is 23 degrees Capricorn. Where is Mr. Pluto? The empowerment agent right now, 23 degrees Capricorn. So our first winner, we're calling it for Mr. Brad Pitt. We love you, Brad, and the Academy is going to love you on Sunday night. Okay, so how was that? Everybody like that so far?
That was great, Rod,
okay, so,
because it really shows,
yeah.
It's so easy to get confused with so many things going on. So, you know, targeting the houses that the conjunctions are happening in, and as you know, showing trines to the midheaven, that type of thing. Yeah, you can clearly see it. Thank you.
One of the secrets that I have found here is the more exact a transit is, the more you can pick the winner. I have found that transits, even within 2 or 3 degrees, are not as potent as a precise transit, even on the midheaven. Mm-hmm. So I got a couple things wrong one year because I was looking at a transit of about 2 or 3 degrees, and it wasn't strong enough.
Yeah. So
the more exact a transit is, the stronger it is, the more likely the winner. And Brad Pitt has got all these exact aspects.
He's got a lot of personal planets being targeted by the big guys, hasn't he? Okay, next.
That's it. Okay, best supporting actress. Let us take a look. This is Florence Pugh. It's not Poog, I understand. It's Pugh. So, Florence Pugh, who was in Little Women, if I'm correct. Am I right in that? I think I am. All right. So she is English, I believe. And let us take a look at her chart. Okay. She has a lot upstairs in the 10th house. So this is a strong chart. All of the actresses, best supporting actress, it's a very strong category this year. Okay, so let's take a look. First of all, she's had Jupiter transiting her sun at the top of the chart during the nomination period, during the voting period. That's right up there. And so obviously that is a very strong aspect for a possible win. She also has Pluto sitting on her Neptune, or about to get there, which is transformation Pluto and empowerment Pluto regarding one's creativity or film career, Neptune. Change of one's ideals. Well, an Oscar win would certainly do that for you, wouldn't it? You would go up not only in your fee, but also in general recognition. She also has, if you look to the first house, a very strong transit of Uranus right there in her first, trine Jupiter at in her 9th house. That is just past an exact transit, but it's still in the wake of all of that. So this past year has been very strong for her. Also, you will notice that her natal Jupiter is at 0 degrees Capricorn, and the transiting moon, when the ceremony begins, is 0 degrees Virgo. Another good sign. The nodes, if you look down toward the bottom of the chart, the transiting north node at 6 degrees Cancer is also sitting in a trine to her Mercury, which is in the 11th house up at the top of the chart there. Her Mercury is at 8 degrees, and the node has just passed it, moving backwards, at 6. So it was conjunct or in a trine to Mercury during the voting period. What makes me think that this is one of those times where she's not quite there is that Saturn at the top of the chart also sits on her Mars, which is kind of a downer. And Pluto is also square her nodes, and her nodes are near the horizon of her chart. So the Saturn-Pluto made a square to her nodes, which is sort of a heavy energy. So strong as this chart is, I'm going to say, Flo, you might be back, but it's not quite your year this year. Okay? So let us go to Margot Robbie, who was in Bombshell and played Gretchen, the woman who blew the whistle on the Fox News head, who certainly deserved to be called out for it. Okay, so let's take a look. Now, she has been really talked up this year as being a possible winner because her performance was so effective. Let's take a look and see. Here we have at the top of the chart, the North Node having just crossed not only her midheaven, but also her Sun. Very strong. Okay? And Sun Mercury, in fact, since she has those two right together there. Also, if at the bottom of her chart, you find Uranus at 7 degrees. So the South Node has been making a conjunction to Uranus, just now moving off of that. So that was there during voting season. That's very interesting because I have found the South Node isn't as weak as people tend to think. South Node is like past karma. So while she hasn't done a lot in a dramatic way, you know, her Harley Quinn was more of the comic book variety. Uranus on the South Node is like an appreciation of your inherent talent in some ways. But let's take a look. I'm not seeing a lot of other aspects except Uranus by transit opposes her moon exactly. Her moon is in the first house in Scorpio. Wouldn't you look at her and see Scorpio? I mean, Harley Quinn was certainly a Scorpionic type of heroine, superhero, very violent. But Uranus in opposition to the moon, that's excitement. It's not necessarily something I would look to for recognition in an award ceremony. Could be an upset with a great deal of emotion, but I'm not quite seeing that. The other aspect that I am seeing is Neptune sitting down here in the 6th house, trine her Jupiter in the 10th. I think she'll be back in a year or two when Neptune gets to 19, 20 degrees. But for this year, sorry, Margot, I think the tears you shed in the film are not going to be totally appreciated on the podium this year. Okay, let us take a look at the next one, who is Scarlett Johansson. And she is very well talked up this year. And in fact, she is nominated in not just one, but two categories. I'm going to have to reach over here and pull out her chart because I only have one chart for her printed up, but here we go. Here is Scarlett. Okay, so is her chart as strong as all the talk is? She is nominated both as lead actress and as supporting actress. Okay, her role for supporting actress, or her role for lead actress was for Marriage Story. And for JoJo in the supporting category. So this is about that. First thing we notice, if you look down to her second house, is that she has had a Jupiter return going on, once every 12-year cycle of good luck. Okay, and it's in her second house of money. You know how much money this woman is going to make? I once had her pegged for one of my characters in one of my scripts, and then I had a dream of Scarlett being up at the top of this sort of cliff, kind of moving away out of my sight. Now, there you go. She has moved to the top of the heap in the last few years and made a ton of money, too. And this Jupiter return in the second house is only going to increase her worth. And that was there during voting time. So it's possible. Take a look down there at the transiting Saturn, also in her second house, in a nice trine to her node, her north node on the right conjunct the descendant, the seventh house cusp, Saturn trine the node. Another possibility of earned rewards. If you look down into her fifth house, you will see Uranus in an exact opposition to Pluto. That's big change. My beloved Guru, Sri Swami Satchidanandaji Maharaj, left his physical body when I was personally under Uranus opposing Pluto in my chart. And so it causes big changes in your life. So she's nominated twice here. Who knows? The most interesting thing to me is if you look down at the very bottom, you will see that Neptune is sitting conjunct her nadir. Now, I find that interesting because a lot of what Marriage Story was about was, home life, domesticity, and the dissolving of it. So it sort of describes that one movie. But is this the kind of transit that I would look for to peg a winner in an award ceremony? Not necessarily. I think it's strong. I think it's very strong. She could surprise. I'm just not going to give it to her. The Astro Oscars, sorry, love you, Scarlett, but not this year. Okay, Kathy Bates has a bit of a stronger chart than even Scarlett this year. Let's take a look. Okay, Kathy Bates. First thing we want to see is if you look up to the top of the chart, the degree of her sun is 6 degrees Cancer. Where is that north node as we speak? 6 degrees Cancer. Okay, so, yowza, yes indeed, Kathy Bates, possibly on the podium. Okay, take a look over to the left, and you will see that the moon, as the ceremony begins, is at 0 degrees Virgo. Okay? It makes a sextile, a 60-degree open door opportunity angle to Venus and Mercury at the top of her chart, there at 0 degrees Cancer. Okay, all right, right there. Yes, indeed. Another good sign, an excellent sign, in fact. This is a real possible winner right here. If you look down to her 4th house, you will see that Saturn and Pluto sit down there in her 4th and they straddle a trine to her ascendant, which is at 25 degrees Virgo, right there on the left. Yet another good sign. And her moon also sits on the 7th house cusp at 26 degrees Pisces. So that is not only a trine to the ascendant, it is a sextile to the moon right on the horizon. That's a possible winner. This is like 4 aces if you're playing poker. What could beat 4 aces, I ask you? Well, I believe that something does. Next nominee, please. And this is Laura Dern. Laura Dern, who has had a number of very well-respected independent roles, and who was most famously in Jurassic Park. Let's take a look at her chart. She is the favorite by sentiment because she has not won and has been in a lot of well-respected films. But she's also got the aspects for it. So let's take a look here. If you look up to the top of her chart, you will see Pluto, the transiting Pluto Saturn, okay, are sitting in a lovely trine or a nice flowing angle to Laura's Uranus, which is in her 7th house. Okay, she was born under the Uranus-Pluto aspect of the mid-60s, the revolutionary energy. So Pluto trine Uranus, wow, that's not only big change, that is self-empowerment. That in itself would be enough to give it to her. But look, it is almost her birthday as well. If you look over to her 12th house, by the way, the 12th house actually rules film. It's not the 5th. 5th is entertainment, yes, but Neptune is the ruler of the 12th house of Pisces, and that's where her sun sits, in the 12th house. And look at that. She has a birthday within hours. She has a solar return within hours, which here is very strong. Not only that, if you order right now, you'll also get closer toward her ascendant, a Mercury return just within hours of the ceremony. And Neptune is sitting in her 1st house, having recently conjuncted Venus, in a square to the midheaven. Now, that could be illusion, but it could also be glamour as well. So while Kathy Bates has a very strong chart, I am giving the Astro Oscar here in Best Supporting Actress category to Laura Dern based on the exactitude of her aspects. Because remember, what I found is that the exactitude of the aspects on Oscar Day usually portends the winner. Okay? Laura Dern, congratulations. How are we? Everybody enjoying this?
I'd say so. They're taking it all in.
A lot of information. Now you know why it generally takes me several days to put all this together.
Yeah, you have to study all of them, don't you? And weigh it all up. So, no, it's great seeing how you're doing it. Thank you.
Um, so the idea in all of this is to recognize that astrology does have an effect. I found through a number of years of doing this that uh, while the previous awards can give us some idea of who's going to win, often there are upsets that astrology can show us. And so I try to ignore all of that while I'm doing my charts. I look at it later and often get confirmation of what I've seen in the charts, because sometimes the favorites are favorites for a reason. This was one of those years, in fact. Okay, good. I see a note here that I'm right in calling Pluto Mr. Empowerment. Yeah, you know, he breaks you down and then he goes, all right, now get up off the turf. Well, if you can manage to do that, then you're stronger than you were before, right? But also, you know, Pluto is Pluto for a reason. Plutonium is made from Pluto, right? And it's a relatively small substance with a big effect in an atomic weapon. And plutocrats are powerful people by definition. So Pluto astrologically does have that effect if it is in a harmonious angle. In a disharmonious angle, it just breaks you down and leaves you to yourself and says, go ahead, see what you can do with all of this. So it ultimately empowers you, just not quite as harmoniously. Okay, on to Best Actor in a Leading Role. Once again, Julia's favorite film, The Two Popes. Jonathan Pryce, wonderful actor who has been in a lot of films that have not been as popular as some of the actors that we're seeing here. But he is very renowned, and he is, I believe, yeah, he's 82 himself right now, or 81. So he is up there along with Anthony Hopkins. So the old guys got the roles of their lifetime in this film. Okay, so let's take a look at Mr. Pryce's chart. Maestro, if you would, please. Thank you. Okay. I think I've seen one film that Jonathan Pryce has been in. Not a lot, but I am also not seeing a lot here in his astrological chart. If you look up to the top of the chart, you will see Uranus approaching his midheaven. Well, any outer planet that moves up toward the top of the chart has an effect on your visibility. I'm looking forward to Saturn getting up there next year for me. It's about to trine my zero Gemini ascendant in the spring. Hallelujah. Don't ask about last year. It was in Capricorn, conjunct my Saturn Pluto in the ninth. Or Saturn Pluto was conjunct my Mars. So the more that an outer planet moves up, the more visible you become. And Uranus has often an unexpected effect of, like, not just excitement, but an unusual role. So who knows? This guy could play an elderly serial killer or something next time. Who knows? In any case, what we're seeing with that Uranus up at the top of the chart there is that it's in a kind of a hard square to his Saturn sitting in the 12th house there. Okay? I would like to think that Mr. Pryce is going to live a bit longer, but that's a tough aspect right there. And it's not necessarily a winning aspect for an award ceremony. Okay? A better one is that Neptune, sitting there in his 7th house by transit, is making a nice trine or a nice flowing angle to the Moon-Jupiter aspect that he's got down in his 4th house. It's at the midpoint between the Moon and Jupiter. That's very nice. That's soft energy. And remember that Neptune rules spirituality as well. So he's got his role as what? A Pope. The other aspect I'm looking at is Pluto sitting down there in his 5th house, sitting next to his natal part of fortune. But I'm reminded that this is a noon chart, so we don't actually know where his cusps are. Pluto, however, does sit from that point in a sextile to his Jupiter, which is down here in at least this noon chart's 4th house. Still, the aspects aren't exact. So I'm not seeing much that could pull in anything for him other than simply a nod. I do see that his nodes are in the mutable signs. They're the North Node at 2 degrees Gemini, here in the noon chart up at the top, the South Node at the bottom, and the transiting moon for the ceremony squares the nodes. They say a square is a skipped step, but it's only the moon and not really that important. So, Mr. Price, respect you, can't quite see it for you this year. Okay, let us move on. Adam Driver has gotten a lot of respect for his role in Marriage Story. Although I did like him in the latest Star Wars as well. I didn't really like the movie that much, but I liked him. Okay, so Adam Driver, let's take a look. This is an actual chart, 12:34 p.m. Pacific time, born near LA here. So let's take a look. What has he got going on? Does he have the aspects that would give him the win because of the great buzz that he's had? Let's take a look. Let's take a look up at the top of the chart where we see Mars about to transit his Neptune. Okay, well, that's not terribly strong. It's a day or two and not even exact yet. What we do find is that Saturn and Pluto are not really making many aspects from his 11th house. Remember, Saturn and Pluto is where all the action has been. Do anything else in his chart except his Sun, which is at 26, and so he's 26 Scorpio in his 9th house. So if you've got a Saturn, an exact Saturn aspect to the Sun, that's respect, certainly, but it's not necessarily the love of the Academy. So the Saturn and Pluto occurred in an applying sextile to his Sun. That tells me that he'll be back in a year or two. But I'm not really seeing anything else that could pull it in for him. The North Node down here in his 5th house is trine his natal Saturn up in the 8th. Again, it's not exact. So I was surprised when I looked at this chart because he's had great buzz. But I'm not seeing anything that is strong enough to warrant an award, at least astrologically. So, Adam, drive on. Antonio Banderas. Antonio, Mr. Zorro himself. I once gave a reading to his ex-wife, Melanie Griffin, when I was out on Venice Beach one time. She stopped by, and I kind of warned her about things going south in the marriage if things didn't change. And unfortunately, they didn't. But I understand they're great friends now. So God bless you, Antonio. Okay, so here we go, Antonio Banderas. Very nice chart. Look at this. It's a real time, 9 p.m. in Malaga, Spain. Look at that nice Jupiter at the top of the chart there, both natally and by transit, okay, in his 10th house. So he's past his exact Jupiter return, which occurred when the movie came out late last year. And he has got, let's see, he's got on his ascendant, he's got Neptune sitting there on his south node in his first house. Okay, Neptune on the south node. I would tend to think that Neptune on the south node is something like being pulled back into a past habit or a role or a category of something that maybe you have an innate feel for, but isn't breaking a lot of fresh ground. What it does have, though, is an effect on being loved. The south node is like accumulation of habits, and it's in Pisces. His Neptune is transiting in Pisces, or the transiting Neptune is in Pisces on his south node. It's like, I love what I'm doing, but I'm just not doing anything fresh and exciting, but this just fits me like a glove, so I'll do it. Now, if you look up at his 11th house, what you find is a strong transiting Jupiter conjunct Saturn, his natal Saturn. And that was going on during voting season. So Jupiter-Saturn is famous for promotion, for getting that nice business promotion that you've always wanted. So has he got a shot? I'd say yes. Also, if you look down to where the transiting moon is, in his 6th house of work, you see that as the ceremony begins, the transiting moon is sitting right on his Venus. So Antonio is loved on Oscar night. Will it be enough to pull in an award? I'm just kind of not seeing it. They're good aspects, they're not great. Okay, so Antonio, adios. Okay, our next actor with a capital A is Leonardo DiCaprio. Leonardo, the best thing in many films. He won for the one where he got mauled by the bear. But I'll tell you what, he is a bear of a guy and one of the greatest environmental activists right now, and we need Antonio. So Antonio, the more visible you can stay, the better for everybody. Okay, Antonio in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, nominated for Best Actor. Let's take a look, first of all, at his 10th house of career recognition and success. And what we find is the lunar eclipse. Remember that eclipse just a few weeks ago? Under the Saturn-Pluto, opposite the Saturn-Pluto? Well, it sat right next to Leo's Saturn. A lunar eclipse conjunct his Saturn. And not only that, it made a grand trine to his sun down there in the 2nd house in Scorpio. along with his Venus, and Neptune sitting down there in, where was it that I saw it? Neptune, I'm sorry, the transiting Neptune. So the lunar eclipse made a trine to transiting Neptune, and that also made a grand trine to his Sun and Venus. That's pretty damn strong. That's like, sure, I accept this reward. I've earned it. You gave it to me. Thank you. Love it. Now let's go party. You know, it's that kind of easeful type of energy. So it won't be a surprise. It won't be a surprise at all if Leo cops this reward. Not only that, if you look to the right, if you look to his 7th house cusp, what you find is that the transiting Venus and Chiron are sitting almost precisely on his 7th house cusp. So he's feeling good one way or the other right after that ceremony. Okay, now what tells me that Leo could really win it is that Mercury on Oscar night down in his 6th house is sitting precisely on his Jupiter. That looks like a speech. And Neptune by transit in his 6th house is trine his Saturn in the 10th within a degree. In any other year, this is your winning chart. But remember what I said, the more exact the transits, the closer you are to picking the winner. Okay? And the favorite in this case is a favorite for a reason because of the transits. So let's take a look at our last nominee, who is Joaquin Phoenix. I have to get that little government. Joaquin Phoenix. For Joker. Okay. Now this is a very intriguing chart because it's not the type of chart that you would normally see as a winner, except that the aspects are so exact. First of all, let's look up at the top of the chart where we see the transiting North Node, which of course is the life destiny point. All right, then you look down to Joaquin's 2nd house, and what you see is that over the last couple of months, in fact, it's still to come, actually, because the North Node goes backwards. He's got the North Node trine his Sun in the 2nd house of acquisition. Well, that looks like acquiring a golden statue just by itself. But if you look over to the right, you will see Mercury, which is the planet of communication, sitting precisely on Joaquin's Jupiter. Okay, come on. That's a speech. That's the speech of a winner. Okay, that is talking in an expansive way while you're getting a promotion. That's Mercury on your Jupiter. And look at this. Neptune by transit has been sitting on his 7th house cusp. Now think of the role that he's nominated for. Joker. Okay. Okay, Julia's saying he talks about injustice too. There you go. Now, Neptune on the 7th house cusp has a nasty reputation for confusing yourself and being deceived by others. Okay. What happened to the Joker? He kind of went crazy, didn't he? In his own world, deluding himself. Now, I've seen this with people in charts where relatives get Alzheimer's or, there's something wrong with their mind. So Neptune on the 7th house cusp sort of dissolves the personality. which I think is very appropriate for the role that Joaquin was playing in Joker. So I see this as kind of the signature of the role. And by transit, if you notice right up here in his 7th house, yes, you're right, he is the same age as Leonardo. If you look a little further up in the 7th house, you find that the transiting Venus-Chiron conjunction in early Aries is crossing his moon. And remember that the moon is the receiver. The moon takes in. Well, he's feeling good on Sunday, okay? And finally, we find that Uranus, up in his 8th house, is straddling an opposition to his 2nd house, Venus and Sun. Even more than anything else that kind of describes the Joker, doesn't it? The wild card, literally. So he's got the exact transits. And despite the strength of Leonardo's chart, and I will not be surprised if Leonardo wins based on the strength of his chart, but based on the exactitude of the aspects, I'm giving the best lead actor Oscar to Joaquin Phoenix. You may all applaud Joaquin. I think he's going to get a standing ovation. And probably give quite a speech, too. Okay, Best Actress. Everybody hanging in there, by the way? You like what we're doing here? I'm trying to make it as interesting as I can.
Yes, thanks, Rob. Everyone's thinking.
Okay, so what I'm giving here is basically a class in how to interpret an event chart in relation to your natal chart. But in this case, it's fun because we kind of know everybody. Okay, good. All right, so I have to go grab Scarlett's chart again because she is nominated in this category as well, which is lead actress. Okay, first we have, I can find Saoirse's chart here. Here we go. Saoirse Ronan. That is Saoirse. You wouldn't get that from the spelling, but I have a friend who is a friend of hers, actually. He's from Ireland, and he knew her before, and Saoirse is apparently a very dear and wonderful young woman, and he has been delighted to see her succeed, and I loved her in the Great Budapest Hotel, among other things. So here she is, up for lead actress now. And not just from Brooklyn, but for Little Women. And let us take a look and see what she has. Does she have the aspects to win? Okay, so the first thing you notice here is that her 10th house is packed natally. She's born on April 12th, even though this is a noon chart and we don't know the exact time of her birth. I asked my friend, Tony, call up Saoirse and get her time of birth. He says, oh, I can't right now, Ra. All right, so we'll let her go, Tony, but I'm still expecting it. All right, so, but she was born on April 12th, 1994. April 12th. I have an ex-girlfriend who was born on April 12th. Don't ask. But in any case, what we find here is Saoirse has got a packed 10th house. So this is somebody who came in to be a public figure. Now, let's take a look down here at her 7th house cusp, which is where all the action is for her. Her 7th house cusp happens to be 24 degrees Capricorn. Yes, Saturn, Pluto, sitting right there. Okay, Pluto's about to get there. Saturn has just moved over the descendant. And what does Saoirse have sitting right there at 26 degrees Capricorn? Uranus, planet of sudden change, sometimes chaos, freedom from the known. Okay, so Saturn conjunct Uranus. It's kind of a down. It's disappointment. I can't quite be me, who I really am. So immediately I would not pick that as one of the winning aspects. Pluto sitting on the 7th house cusp, about to get there, conjunct her Neptune. She was born under the Uranus-Neptune conjunction, and Saturn-Pluto have been transiting it. Well, it's no wonder she's in the public eye right now, because remember the 7th house is one of the public angles. But Pluto on Neptune, I don't know if you could expect her to be a killer in a film coming up, but it's kind of one of those aspects where you transform. Right, you're right. Forgive me, you are correct. It may not be her angle, though. You are correct. I'm just looking at the chart as I have it here. But the aspect is correct. Pluto on her Neptune, no matter what, is a big transformer of her creativity. So it's a heavy-duty aspect. So expect her in a more dramatic role next time, maybe as somebody a little darker in character. Well, what we're seeing here is that Pluto is also squaring her sun, no matter what the angles of the chart are. So Pluto square the sun, sitting on her Neptune, that's heavy duty. So over the next year or so, I would expect her to be in a more dramatic, in a darker role. But for now, cheers to, we love you, but the luck of the Irish is not with you this year. Okay, Charlize Theron from South Africa, no less. We do have a real chart for her. And this is, she is a Leo, as you might expect. She actually played a serial killer before. And I have a friend in Michigan who actually had that serial killer. So I want to say Warren, female serial killer, as her client. Yes, this was before she actually went out and murdered people. So that was kind of freaky. But Charlize did such a great job playing Megyn Kelly in Bombshell that she is up for the Oscar now. Will she win? Let us take a look. Okay, this is a real chart. And the first thing we see is we are looking at that node being in her 10th house. So you look to the node to see where the destiny is, and it's in her 10th house, but nothing else is there. So we got to be seeing some kind of aspect for her to win. All right, let's take a look. What else is going on? First of all, the transiting sun down there in the 6th house is making a precise trine to her midheaven. Ooh, we like that. That's very, very good. Okay. We also have Mercury sitting in an almost exact opposition to her Venus in the 12th house. Mercury coming up to an opposition to her Venus, an opposition not so good as a conjunction. We do have transiting Neptune on her real chart's descendant, 7th house cusp. Yes, we do. So everything that I was saying before about Neptune on the 7th house cusp, the confusion, the sense of maybe being recognized for that confusion would certainly apply here, because Megyn Kelly was very confused as to what to do. Also, Megyn Kelly suffered a career deflation when she left Fox News and, tried out a show that didn't work out for her. So sometimes the character and the actor portraying him or her, the subject of my friend Alex Trenoweth's next book, by the way, sometimes really does fit, and that would be the case here. Okay, here's the kicker for me, though. Saturn opposing Saturn. Okay, now I moved to California under my Saturn opposition. It wasn't an easy journey. Saturn opposing Saturn. Saturn transiting from her 5th house to the natal 11th house where she has her Saturn. Not seeing it. Charlize, 2020 may be good for vision, but your vision this year is kind of not there. Okay, so much for Ms. Theron. Oh, here we come to Scarlet again. Okay, where's my Scarlet chart? Here we are. Okay, let's take a look again. Since we saw some strong things before, we didn't see her quite winning in the supporting category. Let's take a look. Once again, look down to the 5th house, and you see that exact Uranus opposing Pluto aspect. Okay, 5th house, there you go. Okay, the Uranus opposing Pluto, I don't know. Upset, yes, possible upset. She's got 2 chances this year. I mean, how many people get 2 chances in 1 year? What is her progressed sun doing? You know, she's a Sagittarius. Her sun sits on my 7th house cusp. You know, I thought, maybe Scarlet and me, but, I don't think that she goes for, well, I don't know, she went for Sean Penn. Yeah, maybe. But her sun in the 12th house near the ascendant, and this is a 7 a.m. chart, so it could actually be in the 1st house, is, what am I looking at? Very strong right there. Why? Because it's being trined by the transiting Venus-Chiron conjunction. Okay, and that is occurring in her 4th house, late 4th house, but that is an exact trine, or just a moving off of a trine to her sun. Very good, although it's a little weakening because it's moving away. But the kicker for me, as I was saying, that Jupiter conjunct Jupiter, look at that, down there during voting season in her 2nd house. Yeah, it's moving off, but it's still there. I mean, Trump won in 2016 when he hadn't quite reached his Jupiter return yet. The Jupiter return has a wake, and it has a kind of a wide category, I think. Jupiter is broadness anyway. So I'd still say she's under her Jupiter return, and that's a possibility. But for me, the transiting sun is precisely square her natal Saturn. Her natal Saturn's in the 12th at 20 degrees Scorpio. So much as I might love to love you, Scarlet, not seeing, which is too bad because she's a brilliant actress and she got 2 chances this year. Okay, now we come to Cynthia Erivo. Okay, Cynthia Erivo. for, let's take a look here. Okay, you remember Jupiter, planet of good fortune and expansion, involved in promotions? Yes. Okay, so Jupiter is doing some wonderful things for Ms. Arrival. Look at up the top of her chart here. Okay, now this is a noon chart, so we don't know the angle. But for this chart, let's take a look here. And we find that Jupiter is sitting precisely on her Mercury. Okay, that's a possible speech. Not just that, Venus, excuse me, not Venus, the sun. Look at the sun, sit there, 2 degrees further away, 17 degrees Capricorn. Jupiter approaching the sun is about as good as it gets. And with Mercury sitting there, that's a possible winner. That is a possible winner right there. If you go back down to her 8th house, or in this chart, the 8th house, you will see that Mars is sitting, having just passed Uranus. Well, hopefully she doesn't have an accident on the way to the ceremony. But Mars on Uranus is lots of excitement. So very explosive and very exciting. Who knows? She could do something very out of character just before the ceremony. If you look to, in this chart, the 12th house, you will see Venus by transit is in a nice trine to her natal Venus in this chart in the 7th house. So she's having fun on Sunday, that is for sure. Okay, and then finally, if you look down here, you will see, in this case, the 12th house near the ascendant, you will see Uranus. By transit is coming up to her moon. Okay, so Uranus on the moon, that is a real possibility of some real sudden changes with regards to her self-image, her sense of herself as a woman, her inner life, all of that. And remember that Uranus transits tend to work beforehand, before the exact transit. So I'm putting this pretty much exact at this point. Does it add up to a winner? It's strong. It's very strong. Jupiter, Mercury, and the Sun, I would normally pick as a winner. But I'm not. Why? Because this year we've got someone with even stronger aspects. Maestro, the envelope, please. Here is another woman that I had pegged in a leading role in one of my scripts. My co-writer actually spoke to her about it. She said she'd be interested in reading the script, but then she went away, didn't return the call, and is now up for the Oscar and is probably going to win it. So much for my hopes, although, I mean, who knows, but her price is certainly going to go up. In any case, let's take a look at Renee's chart. Renee Zellweger. Okay, yet another chart where we see a lot of exact aspects. Yes, she has won before. She won for Chicago before. And I believe she won for Cold Mountain in the supporting category. Check that. I have to check my Oscar history. By the way, do you know that last year, the cover article for Dell Horoscope, the last one before they went to a bi-monthly format, was my article on the history, the astrological history of the Oscars. So there, I will be writing a book about all of this. I'm calling it, yes, you Yes, you guessed, Astro Oscars, the Astrology Meets the Academy Awards. That's the one after my current book, which I'll tell you about in a bit. See, the great thing about doing a show like this, you get to plug your own stuff. Okay, so let's take a look at Renee. And this is a real chart. Okay, so up at the top of the chart, yes, again, that north node in the 10th house. Okay, that is at 6 degrees Cancer. Okay, so if you look to Renee's 8th house, you find her sun at 5 degrees Taurus. So the north node is moving into an exact sextile to her sun. Okay, well, that's great right by itself, especially because the node is in the 10th house, which is the point of recognition. Okay, the transiting near in the 12th house here, the transiting moon is also beginning to make a trine to her sun. It's not exact, but it's applying. And during the ceremony, it will move 2 to 3 degrees. So it will be within a degree or two of an exact trine to her sun by the time the ceremony ends. Okay, so that's about as good as it gets there. If you look down to her 5th house, you will find Saturn and Pluto sitting right there in the 5th house of creativity and entertainment. But if you look to her natal 1st house, you find that she has a Jupiter-Pluto conjunction in the latter degrees of Virgo. Guess what? That is exactly where Saturn and Pluto are going in Capricorn. So you have a trine from the heavy duties Saturn and Pluto to or Pluto and Jupiter. Hello. So Saturn is in an exact trine, almost exact trine to her Jupiter, which is very good for business and for earned rewards. Not only that, it is a sextile to her own natal north node in the 7th house. And Pluto trine Pluto, which she's just had during voting period, is self-empowerment personified. So you reach that in your mid-50s. And here she is, approaching that period in her life. And she is our Astro Oscar winner. And I am betting the winner on Sunday night. But one more aspect clinches it, and that is if you look up to her 8th house, you find Uranus coming into an almost exact conjunction to the sun. Could she lose in an upset? Maybe. But I'm not counting on it because I think she feels free after this to do whatever she wants to do. It's Uranus on the sun. Congratulations, Renee. Okay. How'd you like that? Now, Best Director. I look here. Forgive me for a moment. I got to pick up my charts. Anybody getting tired? Are you bored?
Yeah, it's taking longer than we thought, isn't it? But that's to be expected.
All right. All right, so let's give me a moment here. Here we go. All right. Okay, great. Let us go to Best Director. Okay. Todd Phillips, who directed Joker.
Can you just tell us, sorry, Ra, just what movies they are directing? Because we might not know what movies they're involved with. Thanks.
Okay, Todd Phillips directed Joker. Let's take a look at his chart. And we'll go through this a little quicker. Okay. Todd Phillips. I'm seeing some things in his chart, but they're relatively minor aspects. I'm seeing Mars sitting at the top of his chart. This is a noon chart, so we don't know the angles, but Mars is conjunct his sun, the top of the chart that we see here. We also see in this chart's 11th house, we see Saturn and Pluto sitting in a sextile to his Jupiter in the 8th. Nice, but they're kind of heavy. They're not the lighthearted, and of course his movie was very heavy, and in fact was criticized for all the violence and madness in it. So Todd is sort of living out that in his chart right now. He's respected for what he brought to it, but he's not loved. He's not loved by the Academy. Big thing that I'm seeing here in this chart, it's on the ascendant, is that he's under his Chiron return. And in fact, he's got it just coming right up here. So this is sort of like his earned reward for all the things he's done in his career. Maybe he hasn't done anything that will be as well recognized as this. But I'm not seeing him winning Best Director. Okay, so let's move on. Come to Julia's favorite film and director, The Irishman, who she says is...
No, my favorite film was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm rooting for that one.
I was joking. Too long, says Julia. Too long. All right. So Scorsese's chart. Scorsese, the master himself. All right. Let's take a look at his chart, if we could. Okay. Not too many aspects for Scorsese this year. This is an exact chart. Let's look up to the top. He's got Uranus conjunct the part of fortune in the 9th house. It's kind of so-so. He's done something that is unusual. In his 7th house, he's got Neptune sitting on his moon exactly. So that's very, very nice. The guy is, it's a little confusing though for normal people, but in a creative field, ruled by Neptune, that's a very nice transit to have, and he's going to get a lot of love. But if you look down in his 5th house of creativity, you see that the Saturn-Pluto, where all the action is in a sextile to his Venus-Sun at the bottom of his chart in his 4th house. Again, that kind of describes his movie, very heavy duty. I actually knew somebody, I shouldn't be saying this because it's the underworld, but I actually have a friend whose father knew people who are described in this film. That's all I'm going to say. And so when you talk about the book, I Heard You Paint Houses, which actually describes a hitman splattering a victim's blood on the walls, I knew somebody, but I'm glad I wasn't any closer. But as for our dear Martin, just not seeing it this year. He doesn't have the aspects. They're other than the Neptune on the moon, there's nothing exact and nothing really describing a win. No really great Jupiter aspects. Okay, moving on. One of the great favorites this year, Bong Joon-ho, who directed Parasite, which has gotten a lot of love as possible Best Picture. Okay, so let's take a look at his chart. This again is a noon chart. Okay, but what we find down here in his 1st house is Mars. He is under a precise Mars return on Oscar night. This man is bouncing off the walls on Sunday. Okay? Not only that, if you look down in this chart's second house, you find Pluto down there, the Saturn-Pluto. Pluto is trine his Pluto in this chart's 10th house. He's under the same Pluto trine Pluto aspect that is the self-empowerment aspect that we saw in Renee's chart. Okay, they could both win. Absolutely, they could both win. No doubt about it. The North Node up in this chart's 8th house is also making a nice sextile to Bong's Saturn, which is in this chart in his, where is it? In his 6th house. It's a little past it though. So he got his recognition, just recently. He's also got Jupiter, which in this chart is down in his 2nd house, squaring his Mercury, which is in this chart's 11th house. Now, any Jupiter-Mercury aspect is a possible speech. But I am seeing this as the square, meaning probably not the winning speech. So much as we love that film, Bong, I think, may not be quite your year. I think the Golden Globe will be, the recognition for your film will be probably as much as you got at this point. Okay, moving on. Q, Mr. Quentin Tarantino. Okay. I once got scammed by somebody who called himself Quentin Tarantino's father-in-law. Quentin, has he won before? I think he did win for the great film that's escaping me at the moment, in the 90s. Actually, I'm not certain. I have to do my Oscar history here. In any case, I got scammed by somebody who called himself his father-in-law and invited me to do readings at a party. And I thought to myself, Quentin isn't married. But I went and did the gig because I wanted the money. Anyway. So here's Quentin's chart, and it's a noon chart, so we don't know the exact time. But if you look to his 8th house, you have Saturn sitting on Saturn is in the 8th, and you have the Sun sitting on his Saturn, which could well mean recognition for his accomplishments, his previous accomplishments. It's like one of these lifetime sorts of things. But it can also be that it's just kind of a downer. You have transiting Saturn conjunct his south node in this chart's 7th house, which is also kind of a downer. But you have, if you look to the left here near this chart's ascendant, you see his north node. Okay? Well, the nodes are actually square his sun in this chart's 10th house. Nodes square the sun. That's a skipped step in recognition. Could he win despite some of the other aspects? Yes, he could. That's a very strong, that's kind of a fated aspect. And he also has, if you look up to the top of the chart here, Uranus, Pulp Fiction. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. Uranus at the top of this chart is approaching his moon. As we've seen several times before, this is a big shift in his life. He's actually said that he's going to retire after he makes 10 films. So I think this is number 9 or 10. But do I see the aspects here? He's got the transiting moon down in the 3rd house in this chart, sitting on his Uranus. Okay, that could be an upset. So he's got mixed aspects, but he's got winning mixed aspects. Will he win? I'm saying no. The reason I'm saying no is because, again, better aspects by Mr. Sam Mendes, who directed 1917, which I saw the other night, and it's a tremendous film. And he directed one of my favorite James Bond films, Skyfall, as well. Okay, let us take a look at Sam's chart. Here we go. First of all, if you will look down here at the transiting sun in his 5th house, it's at 20 degrees Aquarius. Where is Sam's Jupiter? His Jupiter is up in the 9th house in this chart at 22 degrees Gemini. Okay, so it's Sun approaching a trine to his Jupiter. Very good. He's also got, down in this chart's 5th house, Neptune sitting on his Saturn, which is what? Film, sitting on the planet associated with past accomplishments. And although that's not as good as a Jupiter aspect for a creative field, that's good. What clinches it for me is that he's got in his 6th house here, the transiting Venus and Chiron sitting on his Ceres, which is very nice nurturance. The crowd loves him, basically. Finally, we see that in his 3rd house, Jupiter is making a nice trine to his Pluto. I'm sorry. Pluto, where's the Pluto? Pluto in his chart is at 14 degrees Virgo in his 11th house. So Jupiter is making a trine to his Pluto. And finally, what is the clincher? He's under the precise Neptune trine Neptune aspect. Neptune sitting down here in this chart's 5th house to Neptune in this chart's 2nd house, natal. Neptune trine Neptune. For a filmmaker, that's it. That's the winner. So congratulations, Sam. Okay, best picture. How will we choose the best picture, you ask? I'm glad you asked that question. Let's go back to the Oscars chart. Take a look here. Okay. Again, the moon, 1st degree of Virgo. Okay, technical things play a big part in choosing the winner. Okay, if you look up to the top of the chart where you see Uranus, that is in the sector of internationality. That could be an upset for Parasite. We don't know. But again, all the action is in Capricorn down here in the 5th and 6th house of the chart. And Capricorn is very much about history, traditionalism, a real sense of length as well. And so let's see which picture fits this chart the best. Okay, if you would go on, please, to the next, Ford versus Ferrari. Okay, what is this? Well, it's a relationship film, so it fits the 7th house theme. But other than that, it doesn't really have a lot to offer. It's kind of a chart, although you could make the speculation that technically, you know, the way that the cars were built fits the moon and Virgo theme. But other than that, not so much. Next slide, please. Little Women. Okay, this is about a family, and it's certainly about the real sense of relationships, but this is not really a feminine chart. Yes, the moon is in Virgo, which is a feminine sign, but other than that, it's kind of a heavy-duty chart. And Little Women is kind of a softer film. Okay, Capricorn is feminine, says Julia. Okay, we're going to give it to you. But my point is, it's kind of a heavy-duty chart, and it doesn't fit the softness of a film like Little Women. So we're moving on. Okay, Jojo Rabbit. Jojo Rabbit. Okay, now here's a heavy-duty movie that does speak to politics and in the form of satire, and it has to do with the establishment figures being overbearing. Well, that certainly suits Capricorn and the Saturn-Pluto energy in Capricorn. However, it has not gotten a lot of awards, and that's one of the reasons that the Academy probably won't choose this, is it's not really nominated in as many categories. But again, I'm choosing it via astrology, and I'm not seeing a Virgo moon theme as really fitting Jojo Rabbit. And my experience is that the Virgo, the moon's sign and placement often gives us the winning picture. So let's move on. Marriage story. That's certainly about a 7th house sun, isn't it? Relationships. Okay. But it's a little stormier than a Virgo moon would tend to be. It's critical, that's for sure. And it's got lots of dialogue in it that is really great. The screenplay may well win. But it's not really something that I would see as fitting this heavy-duty chart. Okay, so next film, please. The Irishman. Well, there's your length with all that Saturn energy in Capricorn. And it's certainly about a very masculine power-mongering theme, and there's a lot of violence in it to it, which suits the Saturn-Pluto. The Leo ascendant, though, for the chart doesn't really fit the Irishman. There are no real heroes or people of great sunniness in the Irishman. So not a winner in my view. So let's move on to Joker, which certainly is a Saturn-Pluto theme. And remember that trine by the Virgo moon to Uranus, which is about madness. So Joker getting all of the recognition and mixed reviews, but generally great love as a movie could win. But I'm only ranking it probably number 3 or 4, because I think the chart fits a few other films stronger. One of them is Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is all about that Leo ascendant, isn't it? And remember that a Virgo moon is about working people. Okay, Virgo describes the servants and those in the working class. And this is a film about working actors or struggling actors, people trying to break into Hollywood, or yes, Julia is reminding me the moon is on Regulus. It's the hero is having a crisis. That is a real possibility. And remember that the Academy loves movies about the movies. Okay, so this is a real possibility. And would it fit this chart? Yes, it would. Do I see it as winning? Not from my perspective. Moving on. Parasite. Here's the one that could pull any upset. Okay, so this is a film about working class Korean people, a family who are broke. They don't have any food, they don't have any money, and they got to do something. So they ensconce themselves within a rich family's environment and gradually get themselves hired. And it's a blistering satire, very funny, about the roles that people play in society, which certainly suits the Virgo moon. And it's an international film that suits the trine to Uranus. And Parasite could well pull an upset. And it is certainly about human relationships. And there's some nasty stuff that happens at the end, which certainly suits the Venus-Chiron conjunction in the 8th house. But the envelope, please. My choice for Best Picture this year, 1917, based on the Oscars chart. And the reason for this is that it certainly suits the Saturn-Pluto theme of heavy-duty life stuff. It is also about soldiers who are reluctant heroes. And remember, the Leo rising theme is about, look at me. This is what I have to do, and I'm the leader. And the Virgo moon in the 1st house means that it's about the person, the personality. And 1917 is about 2 young men who have to go and prevent the English army from attacking because they're walking into a trap set by the Germans in World War I. And if they don't get there, thousands of people will be slaughtered. So they have to cross the no man's land and the front lines, and stuff happens. And so there's a lot of violence in this movie, although it's more suspenseful than anything else. Yes, and it was shot all in one long take, a long tracking shot, which certainly suits the Virgo moon trine Uranus, which is about technology. And if you will move to the next slide, please, Julia, there's one more way to chart the winning picture, which is that we advance the transits toward 8:30 or so, 8:20, the end of the show. And if you'll notice down at the bottom of this chart, you will see that Mars sits right at the bottom of the chart. And what is the god of war? Mars. Mars on an angle sort of clinches it for me that I see 1917 as this year's best picture. Now, having said that, that's right, Wounded Warriors, Venus in Aries. So I think it suits the chart best. Now, I know it's the favorite, and some people have accused me of just picking favorites sometimes. But sometimes the favorites are favorites for a reason, as I said before. And to my mind, this is kind of a mixed chart and hard for me to interpret. But based on what I know of the films, I'm picking 1917 as Best Picture because as I advance the transits to the end of the show, that's what I'm seeing as the most suitable here. Right, Capricorn is all about the past. So a more traditional film, perhaps about history, seems to me to fit this chart. So there you go. So
thank you, Ra. How cool. Wow.
Thank you. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. This is just my little blurb for myself. My website, you can go to that if you would like a reading. Somebody did this for me, so Astrologer Extraordinaire, I'll take. To book a consultation, you can go to my website. I'm very happy to do any readings for you. And this is the name of my website, www.starpresence.net. And my favorite saying here, remember from the very moment of your birth, you've got star presence. That's what I like to say. Now, somebody asked me about my next book. It's called The Astrology of Bond, James Bond. And it should come out about the time of the movie in April. And so I'm working hard on that as we speak. I've done this for 9 years now, and this is one of my favorites this year. So thank you very much for Julia for all of this. It's been really wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you. That was amazing. You know, what amazing amount of time you've put into it, and it shows, you know, it's really helped us to kind of, you know what to hone into, because looking at 6 charts of one thing of different people going, okay, well, it's very close, but you've really helped us kind of narrow in. I can see all the, let's say, reasoning behind it as well. you know, I am an astrologer, but I mean, I often get confused at those times. It's like, oh, well, that one looks pretty good and that looks pretty good. But, you know, yeah, I've really kind of got a better sense now. Thank you.
Okay. I like to say that sometimes I use a poker analogy. Sometimes it's like choosing between 4 aces, a straight flush, and a royal straight.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes everybody's got good aspects because, I mean, they're being recognized. So, okay, so I'm being asked to recap the choices. Okay, so
yeah, who are your winners? Actor, I'll write that out as well later, but who are your winners?
Okay, the winners: Brad Pitt, Best Supporting Actor. Okay, Laura Dern, Best Supporting Actress. Best Actor, Joaquin Phoenix. Best Actress, Renee Zellweger. Best Director, Sam Mendes for 1917, and I am picking 1917 as the best picture.
Very, very, very well done. Everyone's just saying great, you know, that's on the webinar here. Thank you so much, Ra. Yeah, how fun was that? So cool. We will have to do it every year, huh? We will have to do it every year. So anyone who's just seeing the end of this or something, you can watch the replay. It will be on the Facebook page. I am going to put it on our YouTube channel and on the website, embed it somewhere as well.
Many people have said, I can't make it now, but I really want to see it. I hope you post it. So yes, please post it.
Yes, yeah. Well, again, it's on our Facebook page. As soon as this is finished, you can just watch it under our videos there. So it's going to remain there. But yeah, I mean, again, look back on it all. I think we're all going to be, let's say I can replay it after the Oscars next week. You know, you do this watch party thing, replay it. And let's see that 85% accuracy. I think it sounds pretty spot on, right? From what you've shown us. So cool.
You know, I had a terrible experience after the 2016 election where I could not print my, you know, I actually did print all of my predictions for Hillary winning, and I, like many other astrologers, I got mud on my beard. So I'm not always right, but I think these are good choices.
Yeah, and we know astrology is not all about prediction. It's seeing what's happening to that person, how the chart's going, and there's so many variables. I mean, we do this for fun, and of course, prediction is, you know, a small element of astrology, really, but it is, it can be the most rewarding, really, for things like this. Not playing with people's lives.
And this is a lot of fun. You know, you can win bets. You can win your office pool this way.
Ah, there you go. Right. So Ra has shown us how to use the astrology to pick the winners of the Oscars. And we thank you very much for your time, Ra. It's really been 2 hours or something. So really appreciate your work that you've put into doing this. For the rest of you, again, as I said, you can watch this again as the replay. Do remember the CIA, we put on these free things to remind you that we've got a lot of other stuff going on, like our membership, the other webinars that we do for paid webinars or for the members. We have a fantastic ebook out at the moment. If you haven't got that, do show your support and get that. It's 200 pages of wonderful articles about the 2020s from a lot of our writers. So yeah, we need your support to keep doing stuff like this. So don't forget us, and thank you, Agent 121. Signing off for now.
Thank you for everybody.
We will get back to you next week and say, yay, well done. And I reckon a lot of that is going to be manifesting. Thank you, everyone, for being online. I will stop the
thank you, everybody.
Live now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ra. All the best, everyone.
Thank you.